I think it's really important that 16 and 17-year-olds have the vote because
Keir Starmer has completely lost control of his party. He can't control his rebellious backbench MPs. He's got the worst net approval rating of a Prime Minister 1 year in since records began. The Labour Party is tanking in the polls so badly, such that if there was a general election tomorrow, it is expected that Reform would get the greatest number of seats and completely steamroll Labour. What is Keir Starmer's solution? Let kids vote. Change the rules and cheat.
they're old enough to go out to work, they're old enough to pay taxes, so to pay in. And I think if you pay in, you should have the opportunity to say what you want your money spent on, which way the government should go. So I'm really pleased that we're able to bring more young people into our democracy and give them the chance to have a say over how their taxes are going to be paid and what they're going to be used for.
It's not about the fact that 16-year-olds are allowed to have a job. It's because you want to keep your job, Keir Starmer. Nobody is buying a word of what you said there. And he's talking about how 16-year-olds pay in. You have to stay in education until the age of 18. Yes, you can have a side job. Yes, you can earn a few quid an hour doing an apprenticeship. But are there really any 16-year-olds earning more than the income tax-free threshold? And even if there are a few who somehow earn a little bit more than that, how many of them are actually net contributors to the state? Barely any, okay? You are clearly just trying to give kids the vote, so that you can cheat, because you know there is absolutely no way back for the Labour Party in the polls. This is absolutely ridiculous, and I could rant for ages, but I want to show you Julia Hartley-Brewer's rant on this, because I think she put it better than I possibly could.
Just some breaking news for you. I mean, just when you think things couldn't get any worse. You know how 16 and 17-year-olds, well, they're now trusted to have sex, and they can have, sex with someone of the same sex. That was banned for many years. Not allowed to buy cigarettes, not allowed to buy vapes, not allowed to buy a pint or a glass of wine in the pub. That would be illegal. And why? Well, because we don't really trust those people to make those decisions. Not allowed to get married. Not allowed to get married under the age of 18 either, these days anymore. Required to stay in full-time educational training of some sort at the age of 16 and 17. However, as of the next election, as just confirmed in the news from the government today, 16 and 17-year-olds will be allowed to vote for the first time across the whole of the UK. This brings the whole country in line with Scottish and Welsh elections. We're going to let kids vote. Brilliant. And we know why they're doing this, because they think all those kids who are 16 and 17 will be listening to their lefty teachers and they'll be voting their way, which is interesting, because something like 30 or 40% of youngsters now say they actually support reform. It may well end up backfiring on this government. I think this is genuinely insane. We don't let kids buy cigarettes or booze, well, without their fake ID, obviously, but we're going to let them vote over who runs the country. This is properly and utterly insane. And yes, I've met many a very bright 16 and 17-year-olds. I had one myself, but I still didn't think she should have the vote because she wasn't, oh, wait for it, an adult. By the way, you know what's next? It will be non-citizens getting the vote as well. And for exactly the same reasons. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. This drives me up the wall.
Very well put by Julia Hartley-Brewer there, and she said it may well backfire because youngsters are in droves flocking to Reform. Not that Reform are the most popular party amongst young people, but it's only moving in one direction. Let's take a look at what Nigel Farage thinks of this.
Would Reform support lowering the voting age to 16?
No, I don't, even though we get lots of votes. I don't, because I don't think you should be able to vote in an election unless you're also eligible to be a candidate. And I don't think 16-year-olds should stand for Parliament. So no, I'm not in favour of it, but I'm really encouraged by the number of young people that are coming towards us.
What would you say to people who say, well, 16-year-olds can pay tax and they can join the army, so why can't they vote?
Well, if we say 16-year-olds can stand for Parliament, then fine. Then fine. But that's the big decision to make.
So there we go. That is what Nigel Farage had to say. I have to say, I swear in the past it was the case that Nigel Farage did say he wanted 16-year-olds to have the vote. I may be wrong on that, but I swear he used to say that in the past. So his reasoning there is that whether you can stand for election or not is the measure as to whether you should have the vote. I just think, I remember when I was 16, 17 years old. Yes, I was, I was into politics and I was talking about it. You might say I would have been knowledgeable enough to vote, but I have to say my peers at school, I mean, loads of them, you mention the Prime Minister's name and they're like, who's that? They literally don't even know the name of the one person that runs this country. 16, 17-year-olds, they are kids, okay? I have enough concerns about students aged 18 to 21 who aren't out working having the vote. I think that they are completely deluded, living in a bubble. They aren't having to pay tax, so they don't understand how much of a pain in the arse that is. So they just keep shouting, tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich, because they've never actually had to have a taste of their own medicine. To lower it even further to 16 to 17-year-olds, honestly, absolutely bonkers. Anyway, let's take a look at a little bit of polling that we have, and it's interesting. We've got a bit of a mixed bag here. So here we've got approval ratings for 16 to 17-year-olds. So you've got approve, unsure, disapprove. You can see that Corbyn has the biggest approve bar there with 32% approving of him. Quite a close race on the approve bar between Corbyn, Starmer and Farage, but you'll notice Starmer and Farage have far bigger disapprove bars than Jeremy Corbyn. There aren't that many youngsters who dislike Jeremy Corbyn, it looks like. Now let's just look at, so we don't have to do the maths ourselves, what that results in as a net approval rating, and you see Corbyn comes out massively on top with plus 16. Starmer gets plus 1. And Farage is at the very bottom there with minus 6, even though his the green bar, approve bar, is quite high at 29. You see the disapprove bar is on a whopping 35. Now it's a little bit of a different picture when we look at the voting intention in terms of party as opposed to leader. We know there are plenty of people who would vote for the Labour Party but despise Keir Starmer, so it's a bit of a different picture. And you've got 33% Labour, way ahead of everyone else, so you can see why they would want to give 16 to 17-year-olds the vote. But Reform actually doing decently well to be ahead of all of the other parties on 20%. Still, as I said earlier in this video, Reform are still well behind Labour when it comes to the youth vote, because there's been a lot of talk about, well, the young people want to vote for Reform now. The growth of the Reform Party amongst young people has been pretty astonishing, right, from a party that's come from nothing. A lot of people think that Nigel Farage is very cool on TikTok, but Labour are still very much ahead overall. Now let's take a look at a few tweets. Now Angela Rayner, she has put out an article, she's written an article for the Times today arguing the case for votes at 16, and what I thought was weird is I saw this article pop up on my phone lock screen, and it said Angela Rayner says in this Times article, people can get married at 16, so why shouldn't they vote? And I was like, hang on, you can get married at 16? No, I didn't think that was the case. I've Googled it, and I remember. We changed that a few years ago. We changed that back in 2022. So you can't get married at 16. I don't think, even if it were the case that you could still get married at 16, I absolutely do not think that is good reason to give 16 to 17-year-olds the vote. Is anybody who is 16, 17 years old getting married making a good decision? Does anyone really know who they are at 16, 17 years old? The only people who are getting married at 16, 17 years old are probably people who are being forced into arranged marriages far too young by their parents. And you guys know what community normally does that. That is not a good argument to give 16, 17-year-olds the vote. I won't bore you with Angela Rayner's whole Times article, but you can go take a look at that if you want. But this is her tweet. Today we're delivering on our promise to give 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote. Young people already contribute to society by working, paying taxes and serving in the military. It's only right they can have a say on the issues that affect them. As I said in response to what Starmer said, how many 16, 17-year-olds are working and paying taxes? aside from a few hours at the local pub or cafe where they're not net contributors, they're nowhere near going past the 12 grand income tax free threshold. I don't think working a few hours at the pub means that suddenly you should... Well, actually, 16, 17-year-olds won't be working at the pub because it's a nightmare trying to hire them to serve alcohol behind the bar. But the local cafe, let's say. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Most of them, the vast majority, they are still in school. They're learning how to do a little bit of basic maths or whatever else they're doing for their A-levels or for their apprenticeship. They are kids, okay? As Julia said, you may come across some 16, 17-year-olds who are very switched on. As I said, I was very switched on politically at age 16, 17, but the vast majority of the rest, I wouldn't trust them with anything. I wouldn't trust them not to lock themselves out the house when you leave them home alone, and remember to take their keys with them, let alone give them the vote. Let's take a look at what Madeline Grant said. She said, it's not possible to hate this government enough. They can't pretend this is anything but shameless gerrymandering because they want 16-year-olds to be treated as children in every other way. I mean, as Julia Hartley-Brewer pointed out, you can't buy booze, you can't buy a vape. Not that I'm in favour of vapes, but just to put the two together, you can't buy a vape, a little Chinese pineapple pen, but you can vote and decide who runs the country. Can't make it up. Shamima Begum, I thought this was hilarious. Peter Lloyd says, Shamima Begum at 16. She didn't know what she was doing. She was just a kid. She can't be held responsible. 16-year-olds voting, totally fine. They're grown-ups. Give them power. That's what the Labour Party say. Yeah, Shamima Begum, she decided to join ISIS at 15. Would you give her the vote? I don't think so. Anyway, I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this and you want more news updates like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon with any more updates.